Back to the channel. I finally got my mic working. I couldn't figure out why in the world my mic wasn't working, and it turns out that the plug-in was just dirty, so that's pretty frustrating. Back to the channel here. What we have today is Does God Make People Gay by Johnny Chang. Why would God make people gay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. By the way, before we get into it, leave a like and subscribe, but go down into the description box. You'll see my email there, and what I want you to do is, if you're interested in being on the show, you're walking away from Christianity, or if you're outside of Christianity. I actually had a person who is a native who had commented on one of my videos. If you're native and you're kind of familiar with all of kind of the old spiritual knowledge that the natives had before we came over, please, I'd love to have you on the show. I'd love to talk about that. There's a significant disconnect happening in people right now because of Christianity, because Christianity supports the idea of an in-group and an out-group. It supports the idea of separation, and so because of that, we see that all the time. Now, what we're looking at today, why does God make people gay? You guys tell me. Personally, I don't think God makes people with sin. I think God makes people the way that they're made, and that there's nothing wrong with that, right? The idea that God makes people gay, that's a problem. That's kind of the premise to this entire video, is that that's a problem. I don't see that as a problem. So let's go ahead and get into it.
So I recently just came to Christ, and I'm still learning. So it's right that Jesus knows who we are. He knows everything we're gonna do, everything we already did. He knows us before we're born. Okay, so now there's rules in the Bible, don't lie, don't cheat. There's also rules that are don't be gay, don't, have sex before marriage, or all of that. What I struggle with is, why would God make someone gay, or make someone psychic, or make somebody have something a part of them when he knew them before they were born? It's my thought process kind of does he forgive them regardless, or are they damned?
So God doesn't make sin, understand? Okay. He created us out of the image of God, but only until Genesis chapter 2.
So God doesn't make sin, but he allows sin all over the place, right? Because he created the planet. Supposedly this place was a perfect place. God knows everything. And he somehow still found a way to regret what he had done, which shows that he doesn't know everything. But the idea that God makes things that are perfect is just not true. Or God does only good. That's simply not true. But we'll get into it. We'll stop here in a bit.
Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man came, right? So he didn't make me technically, right? My bloodline is Chinese, right? I obviously didn't choose it. Sure, he may have ordained that, but sin inside of me is the bigger issue here. God wants you to understand that it's not about he created evil.
So a little bit of a fallacy right there, right off the bat. The idea that, hold on, I just want to go right back.
But sin inside of me is the bigger issue. He didn't make me technically, right? My bloodline.
Technically, yes, he did, because he knew you before you were born. So technically, yes, he did know you before he made you, right? So anything that you came in with is something that he knew you were coming in with. So let's
is
get that
Chinese, right? I obviously didn't choose it. Sure, he may have ordained that, but sin inside of me is the bigger issue here. God wants you to understand that it's not about he created evil, he created good. God is only good, right? He created Satan. Satan is the one who pushes evil. When you say
so God can't be only good, and we know that because of the Old Testament. Read the Old Testament. God can't be good. Okay, let's just get that out of the way, right? Any person who says, I have a chosen people, but the people who I don't like, we're gonna do mass, genocide and kill hundreds of thousands of people. Yes, we are killing men and women and babies and unborn babies and children who are 2 and 3 years old, and animals that have done nothing wrong while we're conquering these cities. There's no difference in that from a person who's about to go to war and they utter, God is on our side, so God will deliver us. And then the other side also touts, God is on our side, so God will deliver us. The idea that God doesn't create, God only creates good, that is immediately out the window, right? Because we can see when Jesus says a good tree produces good fruit, a bad tree produces bad fruit, you can look at the fruit of the Old Testament God and see that there is a massive mismatch, to the point to where, oh, I don't know this information off the top of my head, sorry. But there is a school of thought in Gnosticism, there's a school of thought that the Old Testament God and the New Testament God are two different people, and that the Hebrews were initially worshiping the Old Testament God, and Jesus came to show them the one true God. And that's the reason why you have such a dramatic shift in character in God. There is a school of thought that says, hey, look at God's fruit. There is no way that this man is producing anything good, right?
Psychic, for example, he makes people psychic because marvel not, it says in the Bible, that Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. He will always come as a person who's good.
So indirectly what he's saying there is that Satan also makes people gay. That's what he basically is saying indirectly, right? Because she asked, why does God make people gay or psychic? And his response is, only Satan makes people psychic because, they're false light. So indirectly, he basically said that, Satan is the one who made you gay. God didn't make you that way. Okay, more gaslighting from the Christian side of things. Unfortunately, this girl is a brand new Christian, so she'll go through it for a few years before she kind of starts to wake up and realize, oh, there's a lot of inconsistencies in this thing, and I'm having to swallow a lot of bitter pills, right?
Who shows you, hey, I have dreams and visions,
Here's the thing with Christianity, just really quick, in general. Christianity will sell you a God that is all-loving, a God that is all-knowing, a God who cares for you completely, who knows who you are, who knows the number of hairs on your head, who cares and completely provides for a sparrow, all this kind of stuff. Knows every decision you're going to make before you make it, knows your name before you're born, everything. He knows absolutely everything. So, sorry about that. So this is the same God that supposedly loves the entire world, but damns so many people to hell. He supposedly loves everybody so much, but one being, Satan, one being out of the entire universe, one being, Satan, he allows that being to exist on the planet and to rule the planet, to intentionally drive all of us to the wrong whatever, and half of us ended up going to hell. If God actually loved us, if God actually cared for us, if God actually wanted to protect us, he wouldn't allow Satan on earth. Simple as that. Satan wasn't supposed to be on earth. It was because of the sin of Adam and Eve. Guess who was on earth? Satan. Right? Supposedly by the idea of the snake of Adam and Eve. Once again, personally, I don't take any of that stuff serious, but when you look at the story of Adam and Eve were walking perfectly in the garden, and Satan, and for first of all, he put a tree in the garden and said, don't touch it. That doesn't make any sense at all. He's introducing temptation right off the bat, but he also put Satan in the garden, and Satan is there and convinces Eve to take a bite of the apple, right? I have an idea. Why didn't God just wipe out the planet, create a new planet, and say, Satan, stay over there. You're not allowed on this planet. Why would God allow just thousands of years of people dying, thousands of years of people going to hell, before he decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to take Satan and I'm going to ban him to a different part of the cosmos. He's capable. He's completely God. But we see that God doesn't necessarily treat everybody the same way. Why? Because in Job, Satan takes bets with God. Satan takes craps. He sits at a craps table with God. He sits and plays blackjack with God, right? So why would God allow this? Why was it that God was in his courts and Satan was just allowed to walk all over the place? I thought the whole reason why we couldn't go to heaven is because God is perfect and we aren't allowed into heaven because We aren't perfection. We can't be close to God because we're not perfect. But Satan can hang out with him every day. Satan can just have open access to heaven. It just doesn't make any sense at all. I'm sorry. It just doesn't make any sense.
To discern with the Bible, because you're a new baby Christian, right, on your walk. That's why it's important to have communities like this where
basically he's saying right off the bat, your logic doesn't make any sense. You're trying to understand this being that is way higher than you. Your logic doesn't make any sense. You are a human, you're a baby, you don't know, so why don't you just stick around for a while and learn and be quiet, right? So right off the bat, he's basically gaslighting her on the idea that that she can use your standard logic. Okay, maybe gaslighting's not the right word, but he's basically telling her that you're trying to use human logic for something that can't be explained. Accurate, it can't be explained. Look at how God treats people in the Old Testament while claiming to be, unconditionally loving. It does not make logical sense, right?
where people read the Bible? It's a very good question, but to explain it, you have to peel so many layers back. But instead of trying to understand, because sister, what I can see in your heart is you're trying to understand God. Think about that. If you're 5 years old and you're trying to explain a mortgage to a 5-year-old, do you think they'll understand?
No.
There's no way, right? If a kid is like, I want baby shark, let's say, right? And you're like, no, I don't have money. And he starts throwing a fit, right? The kid has to accept it. Understand? He can't just be like, you buy it, you make it make sense to me, why you can't buy me this.
You have to accept the fact that what we're trying to sell you doesn't make any sense. And we can't explain it because we don't understand God, but just accept it. And this is why I kind of walked away from Christianity. There was too much of this, it doesn't make sense, but you can't understand it because you're a mere human being. But when you start thinking of your own personal morals, you start thinking, if I had my family, right? Now, I know some people who are out there who would be like this, but if I had my family and there was a family next door that had a really nice house, a really nice car, and all this kind of stuff, right? Would I go over there and kill everybody inside the family? Kill the husband, kill the wife, kill the little children, kill the infant, kill the newborn child, kill the family dog, kill everybody, move my family into their house so that way we can say God has given us this house, this car, this beautiful bank account, whatever. It happens in the Old Testament time and time and time and time again, and it's considered fair and just. I don't know anybody with morals who would look at that and say, yes, that is accurately fair and just. But if you believe it, if you accept it, if you take it on as true, if you take it on as just, then they can basically manipulate and say anything that they want, and you'll have to accept it as just because it just doesn't make sense, right? The idea that a woman can't have any body piercings or can't do anything to her hair or wear makeup or anything like that in 2 Timothy is what I'm talking about specifically. That idea, right? That wouldn't vibe in today's Christianity. So we just ignore that part of the Bible completely, right? There's so many parts of it. As Christianity grows, more of the Bible becomes ignored. And there are sects of Christianity that say we should not be ignoring those parts of the Bible. And guess what? Those sects of Christianity are the ones who are, to be frank, the Christian nationalists and all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to be political about it, but look at the United States, and we've got conservative Christians out here calling the shots for the United States, and now we've basically picked a fight with the world. Now that's all I'm going to say on that, because once again, I don't like to get too much into the political side of things. But my point is this, is that whenever you're forcing your religion down everybody's throats, and you're trying to pass off the religion as healthy, you're trying to pass off the religion as God, when everybody knows that it's very clearly not. I mean, come on, it just doesn't make any sense at all. So, All right, let's get back into this.
Kids naturally have to accept. God tells us we're all children of God. He wants us to come, whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, as a child. Why? So that we can accept and receive. God told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Not to. Because he never wanted us to have our own good and evil interpretation. Makes sense? But we already ate it, so that's why we have this. Satan has done the job, not just in Europe.
So he's putting this off as fact. He's putting it off as fact that we have ate from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. We have eaten from the tree. This is an absolute fact. We are here now because of Adam and Eve. He is putting it, he is masquerading that as absolute fact, when the reality is that we don't know the conversations that were had in the garden. We don't know what God told Adam, what God told Eve. You know, I hear some people who take snippets of Genesis and say, look, this is in the book of Genesis, and this is what we found in physical land, and so because we found this thing in physical land that's labeled to the book of Genesis, this book is clearly factual. No, you guys don't understand. The chicken came before the egg came before the chicken, right? This is the game that they're playing, right? You have to realize that Moses was writing a book, and Moses was looking around the landscape, and Moses had all of these fairy tale stories, and he decided he was going to write the book of Genesis, right? So yeah, you know, I saw a video saying that the book of Genesis was just verified to be true because they had found apparently Joseph, where Joseph was buried or something like that. And it's just like, yeah, Joseph is a family member of Moses. It would be reasonable for Moses, who's writing the book of Genesis, to know facts about his family. That's reasonable. What's unreasonable is for Moses to know facts of stuff that happened thousands of years before he existed, and to have word-for-word conversations of things that happened thousands of years before he existed. Now, once again, I'm not saying this to say that God doesn't exist. All I'm saying, and the whole point of this channel, is just to show that God and Christianity don't make sense, right? The idea that God, as portrayed in Christianity, is everything that he says in Christianity is just not true. It is very simply not true, right? We don't need to beat a dead horse with that. But the idea that because Christianity is false, God also doesn't exist, well, you know, that's up for debate. And a lot of people decide that God doesn't exist, and that's okay. You know, personally, I'm of the opinion that it does exist. I don't think it has a gender. I don't think it has a specific area of the universe. I don't think it sits up in the clouds and judges people and sends people to heaven or hell. I think it is this incredibly mysterious thing that is both here and there, you know, now and nowhere, that we just don't understand, right? And I'm happy to leave it there, and I'm happy to leave it at the I don't know, right? I'm not going to pretend to be the guy who knows the secrets to the universe. But at the same time, I do know that there is some things that just can't be explained by science. And whenever you bring these things up to scientists, it's basically just a gaslighting situation. And so that's the reason why, for me, I don't, you know, I do believe that there's something out there. I'm not going to claim to know exactly what it is, or that it's some pissed off dude in the sky who wants to send everybody to hell, or heaven, based off if you completely devoted your life to the thing, right? So let's get back to this.
Your life and in my life, but everybody here to boost us up, thinking that we're smart, thinking us finite, limited human beings can understand an infinite God. Impossible. That's like trying to pour the ocean into this bottle. Make sense? So your job.
Okay, so then why would you claim that Christianity knows? Because that's exactly what it is. I mean, he just said that trying to understand the entire infinite intelligence that cannot be understood, but then they claim to know absolutely everything about it because of the Bible. And then whenever things don't make sense, they just say, well, God knows, you know, like God is this actual being, you know. Now, there's a lot of different schools of thought. There's theists, there's polytheists, atheists, all this kind of stuff. Some people think that it's multiple gods. Some people think that it's a single God. Some people think that it's this, you know, this kind of energetic frequency. Other people think that it's this actual being. Other people think that it's this, race of aliens. There's all sorts of schools of thought as to what it is. Personally, I think that it exists is enough for me. I don't try to make it be something, right? Because if it is unlimited, then how are you supposed to even attach how are you supposed to attach a label to it, right? If you try to attach a point on something that is infinite, what is that point at, right? Because no matter where you attach your point, it's going to be infinite in both directions. If you decide you want to look at a number line and you say, okay, God is this, it's going to be infinite in both directions. And so that's exactly my point, is it doesn't matter the stories you try to throw on it, the labels you try to throw on it. Personally, I think that it's just complete neutrality. You hear stories of people who are like, you hear these stories of people who are like, oh, God, I prayed for God to do this for me and I got this thing and it was a good thing, so God must be good. And then you hear another person who is just like, oh, I prayed that something bad would happen to this person and something bad to happen to this person, and, God is good. And it's just like, no, that's not good, right? And so I don't think that we understand. I don't think that we understand consciousness in and of itself. I think consciousness is significantly more complicated than the older minds could imagine, because you do have to understand that we are smarter than the humans that existed thousands of years ago. That is just a fact. We know so much more stuff than the humans that existed thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, humans thought that whenever you drank water and you got sick, that it was God. I'm sorry, no. They wouldn't even link the two. The humans thousands of years ago assumed that if you got sick, it was because God was mad at you and that you did something wrong. Just to find out that you drank some bad water. And then whenever, what's his name? The guy who invented the microscope. I forget his something. The guy who invented the microscope, he was the very, very first. Once again, the very, very first human to see microorganisms. And he was laughed at, he was scoffed at, he was rejected and mocked by everybody in science. And then, guess what? Everybody in science started realizing he was right. Oh, damn, this guy actually had a point. And then years later, we found out that sickness was linked to these things being present inside of the things that we would consume. You can't understand it. And yes, they are giving whatever it is, it's space by saying it's something that nobody can understand, but then they claim to have this tiny book that says absolutely everything that we need to know about it. Where my stance would be that the book, if we did ever write a book about God, it would have to be a book that was completely empty and a book that was so filled with information that it couldn't be kept on this planet because of how big it would be, right? And the reason why I say the book is so simple is because if we are creations of this thing and this thing is loving, wouldn't it love what it created, right? So you could argue that it doesn't, because people are born with deformities and there's stillbirths and all this kind of stuff, right? And so, okay, so maybe it isn't all loving, which is why I always, personally, I think that it's just neutral, that it's neutrality, and that we are just in this creation thing, and that there's not necessarily anything special about us versus other life forms, and we're just animals on a planet just the same way that fish are animals on a planet. That's a perfectly reasonable school of thought to go down as well.
Is not to try and ponder these things, but to accept. Although I don't understand, I'm going to accept him. Although my dad won't buy me Baby Shark, he says he's got to pay the mortgage. I don't know what this mortgage is, but little by little, God will reveal things to you. Amen. Amen.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and leave the video there. This reminds me very much of whenever I went to Spain. We walked around southern Spain, and one of the tour guides was mentioning that all of the southern Spain were rocking kind of Muslim architecture and Islamic architecture. And the reason why is because the Strait of Gibraltar, the Spanish would go and mix with the Africans. They would trade with the Africans. And what the Africans found out was that the Spanish were not intelligent people at all, because the Spanish had the idea that the only book that they needed was the Bible. That's the only book that they needed. And so what ended up happening was the Muslims conquered Spain in a matter of 80 years. Basically took almost the entire peninsula in a matter of just 80 years. Maybe it was 60 years, I don't remember. But it took 10 times longer for the Christians to retake that territory from the Muslims, because the Muslims had science, they had mathematics, they had all of these things. Now here's the thing, when the Christians would retake the territory, they would burn all of the books, because the only book that you need is the Bible. And so this is where I say, this is where you're kept stupid, intentionally kept stupid, because science is trying to push forward understanding of the universe that we live in, while Christians are actively trying to pull back, saying you can't understand the things of God, so just don't try, right? Modern medicine comes from science, right? Modern medicine, modern healing tactics, different medical procedures, these are things that come from science that the church almost every step of the way frowned upon. Why do we have modern surgery? Because we started taking apart dead people after they died. This was a practice that was insanely prosecuted by the church. But now your father can get a knee replacement and a hip replacement and have an amazing quality of life, just because he went under the knife of somebody who decided to cut open a human years and years and years ago, right back in the 1800s, or yeah, I want to say it was 1800s, 1600, no, 1800s. So anyways, let me know how you guys enjoy this video. Down in the description box, you'll see my email. It's desertspring111@gmail.com. If you want to be on the show, if you want to be a part, if you have something that you feel you want to share, let me know. I'd love to have you on the show, talk to you, and kind of explore your beliefs. I'm not going to push anything on you. I don't push anything on any of my guests. You can go back and see some of my previous interviews. And what I really just want to have a conversation about is how you walked away from Christianity and what it looked like now. There's so much fear in walking away from Christianity because it is such a scary thing, right? You have the threat of hell, you have being ostracized by your family, you're having everybody tell you that you're wrong, you may even have start having relationship issues, relationship with your spouse, relationship with your family, and it's valid because they simply just don't know who you are outside of Christianity, because in the Christian mind, morality exists because of Christianity. So when a person starts walking away from Christianity, the assumption, because morality only exists in Christianity, the assumption is that you are now going to become immoral, right? And so that's where I'm going to leave the video there, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Down in the description box, desertspring111@gmail.com. If you'd like to be a part of the show, please send me an email, a little bit about your story, and I'd love to get into it with you. And this is going to be it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.